Welcome to In Joe's Kitchen and the Mardi Gras special, Fat Tuesday special. And as everybody knows, the heart of Creole cuisine is roux. We're going to first make our dark roux. And what I have in here that I've heated up in my enameled cast iron saucepan, because you do need a heavy saucepan for this recipe, is I've heated up a cup of rendered chicken fat. You could also use rendered duck fat, rendered goose fat, rendered beef tallow, pork lard, bacon dripping, whatever you like. I think the chicken fat has wonderful flavor. You could also use just normal vegetable oil, and I have some flour here. It's about a cup's worth of flour. We're going to not add all of it at one time. We're going to slowly stir in our flour. And over to my right here, we have some butter melting, 2 ounces worth, because we're going to make the other staple ingredient we need, which is roasted tomato paste. So we'll start with our flour, and we're going to add, it should sizzle when it goes in, and give it a good stir. And then once it's all stirred in, then we're going to turn the heat down. Yes. Once it's all dissolved here. Okay. Now the heat is now down all the way to low. Now, this has to cook until it becomes a dark color. Now the shade of dark color you take this to it's up to your choice. You could go as light as creamy peanut butter or as dark as bittersweet chocolate. I like a milk chocolate color to this, so we're going to let it cook. And this tool here, it's my favorite, but you could also use a wooden spoon here, would be fine. Or even one of these silicone spoons would be fine. But this is going to cook slowly, and we're going to set a timer for 40 minutes and just let it cook for that. And we'll check on it in 40 minutes. But it's going to be a slow process. And the goal is to keep it on low when you do it. Because if the heat is too high, it will burn. And that's what we don't want. So I'm going to keep it that way here. Next is our butter. And it's on a medium heat. We're going to scoop in 2 6-ounce cans of tomato paste into our butter here. And then we're going to turn up the heat a little bit. Both of these recipes, when doing them using a gas burner, I'm using an electric burner, but if you're going to use a gas burner, I would use a heat diffuser or simmer plaque. Just makes things easier, and it makes a more even heating underneath the pan. And it's important to use a heavy pan here. Tomato paste here we're going to roast. This is going to be a quicker process. Roasting this tomato paste is going to bring out its flavor. And the flavor is going to deepen, which is an important part of this recipe. Now I'm going to turn this up to high so we can get this to sizzle. And I've got 4 tablespoons of butter in here. And when this starts to sizzle, we will turn this one down as well. Because this you don't want to burn. And then I'm going to pull out a trivet for the tomato paste here. Because when it's done, it needs to come right off the heat. And also with your roux here, if you think your roux is too wet and has too much fat, you can go ahead and add a little more flour. Starting to see a sizzle here. So I'm going to turn it down to medium, and we're going to cook this until it changes color. And you want to stir it the entire time because you don't want the tomato paste to burn. Just continue to stir. Our roux is looking nice. Right now it's what we would call a white roux. Then it's going to turn into a blonde roux. Then it'll go more nut brown in color, and then it will ultimately go to a dark color. Roasting of the tomato paste, as we're doing here, is an important step in this process of building flavor. Use the same process as used when making a bolognese ragu. In Italy, you'll roast the tomato paste before you put it in the pot with everything else. It deepens the flavor. That's why often you see recipes where they make a little hot spot in the pan and they put the tomato paste in, so the tomato paste actually roasts in some fat. Darkens in color and has a better flavor when it's roasted. And you could use it unroasted, but it's going to taste better when it's cooked. Okay. You want to cook it until the color deepens. But you want to do this somewhat slow. It's going to go a lot faster, less than 10 minutes to do. The tomato paste, the roux takes a long time. And getting the fat worked into the tomato paste and then just letting it cook. And make sure when doing this tomato paste that you use a non-reactive saucepan. Do not use a saucepan that's aluminum or tin lined. Want to make sure it's non-reactive and heavy. This is enamel cast iron, so it does get hot. We'll give this roux a stir. The fat somewhat settles on the top and then the bottom gets... So we're going to come back in 40 minutes, in about 34 minutes for roux. Tomato paste here, I'm going to turn the heat all the way to high for the last couple of minutes. Just let her rip while stirring. And when you do this tomato paste, if you're really worried about it being in your pan after you've finished cooking it, you can pull it out directly to a bowl and then just proceed. It's going to be even more concentrated in flavor. Okay. I'm now going to shut the tomato paste off. And I'm going to slide it onto a trivet. And we're going to use it for our recipes. And the recipes we're going to make today, we're going to make 3 classic recipes for Fat Tuesday. We're going to make some chicken étouffée. going to prepare a variation on jambalaya. We're going to do a hambalaya with shrimp, which we're going to use some leftover bone-in ham in our recipe here. I'm going to slide this over to this other burner here. Leave it on low. Turn this burner off. And we're just going to let everything cook. And we'll come back in about 30 minutes to check on the status of our roux. It will have changed color by that time. It's just important to do it slow and stir it often, because you don't want it to burn on the bottom. Because this is going to be a thickener and a flavoring for both of our recipes. And then for our third recipe, we're going to make scallion rice, because both recipes are going to be smothered over rice. And when we come back, we're going to be at the butcher block, and we're going to make this, show you how to make the spice blends for both of the recipes. So we'll see you in about 30 minutes. Welcome back to the Spicerers table and our Fat Tuesday special, and we're going to make our spice blend. And what I've put in here is a teaspoon of black peppercorns, a teaspoon of white peppercorns, which is going to be part of our trio of pepper in this recipe. I've also put in a half a teaspoon of ground marjoram, a half a teaspoon of oregano, 4 bay leaves, and a teaspoon of dry thyme. We're going to process that here. Get it finely ground. And I'm not using the lid of the spice grinder. I find this works better. It's more of a tight seal. And you'll feel the spices hitting and know when it's all the way ground. You could do this in a mortar and pestle, but this is easier to deal with. I'm going to check the status of it. Almost all the way ground. Okay, you can stop it there. Give it a tap. And now out it comes. Give the canister a tap. And this is part of the spice blend. To this mixture here, we're going to add half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper and 2 level tablespoons of sweet paprika, like a Hungarian or a domestic. Don't use a Spanish smoked paprika because it's too strong in flavor. Get this well blended. And this is our jambalaya spice blend. And it has that trio of pepper from the cayenne pepper, the black pepper, and the white pepper. We will reserve that for our jambalaya. For our second spice blend is for our chicken étouffée. And I have 2 bay leaves in here, plus a teaspoon of dry thyme, half a teaspoon of marjoram dry, half a teaspoon of oregano dry. And I have a half a teaspoon of white peppercorns, half a teaspoon of green peppercorns, as well as half a teaspoon of black peppercorns. And I've put in here one of my favorite spices, a teaspoon of celery seed. It's going to go in here and be processed as well. Give it a check. Almost, because you got to make sure the bay leaves are fully ground. You can buy ground thyme. You can buy most of the spices all ground, but you get more flavor grinding the bay leaves like this. And it's important here that when you use the bay leaves that they are the whole dry bay leaves. You won't grind fresh bay leaves because they won't grind up. Okay. Okay. And that's our spice blend for our etouffee. Okay. And those are our 2 spice blends. They're ready to go. And we have about 15 minutes to go until our roux is complete. So we will be back at that time and show you what the roux looks like. Welcome back to Joe's Kitchen and the Mardi Gras special. This is our roux. As you can see here, it's turned, after 40 minutes, it's turned to a peanut butter consistency. What I'm actually going to do is cook it for 20 more minutes. And we're going to let it go for 20 more minutes so it gets to the color of milk chocolate. What you want is that milk chocolate color. And next, what we're also going to do at this point, while that happens, we're going to put some chicken stock on for our jambalaya. We need to warm up a quart of chicken stock. You may not use it all, but you need enough liquid here. Okay. And I'm using low sodium chicken broth. If you make your own, even better. Just turn it on to high, just bring it to a simmer. Drop it down to low and keep it at a simmer. That's 1 quart of chicken stock. And when we come back, we will be at the stove ready to cook our jambalaya. And then later we'll make our chicken etouffee. So I'll see you in about 18 minutes. Welcome back to Joe's Kitchen and our Mardi Gras Fat Tuesday special. This is our roux. It is cooked a total of 55 minutes. It's at a consistency, a color right now of dark natural peanut butter. I'm going to leave it at that. It could go darker if you like, but I'm just going to leave it at this color because it's what I like here. And I'm going to take a couple tablespoons of it for our jambalaya. And then the rest of it is going to be used. I'm going to use some of it in our beautiful chicken etouffee. Welcome back to the Mardi Gras special. And we are going to be doing our lovely, delicious jambalaya. And we're going to start by, I've primed the pot here with a tablespoon of chicken fat. And we're going to start with some bacon. Even though we're going to use ham in this recipe, we're going to start with some bacon. And I have this over high heat. We're going to get this sizzle. That's important to begin this process with our bacon. And then this is our ham, which I have diced up. It's in chunks, that's important. And then our shrimp. And what I'm going to do with these shrimp is I'm going to take a little bit, while our bacon starts to heat up, turn our stock down. We're going to take a little bit of our seasoning. And we're going to season up our shrimp with some seasoning, with some of our jambalaya seasoning. The shrimp's going to go in a lot later into the recipe. I'm going to need some salt here as well. Okay. And I'm going to put a little salt on these shrimps as well. Just let them sit. This is our roux that we just finished making. And right there behind it is our roasted tomato paste. I also have Crystal hot sauce, Lee & Perrin sauce, our chicken stock, which we have heated. Bacon we're going to turn down because we need to render it out now. So we're going to turn it down to low, moderately low, and just let it slowly cook. It's going to generate enough fat. And we're going to cook our Holy Trinity, which I have here, a small onion that's been chopped, half of a seeded green bell pepper also chopped into small dice, a rib of celery chopped into small dice, and I have a tablespoon of chopped parsley and 3 large garlic cloves also chopped. Doing this in a heavy cocotte, cast iron, enameled cast iron cocotte, also known as a Dutch oven or French oven, or you could even call it a casserole. Now it's important that this is a slow process when rendering out bacon. And I'm going to turn off my stock because it's ready to go. Doesn't need to be hot. Doesn't need to be boiling when it goes in. Just heated so that the temperature of the pan doesn't go down when we add it in. The shrimp we're going to add to this recipe towards the end of the process because they need about 5 minutes over a low simmer. It's going to cook for a half an hour before we add the shrimp. You might be tempted to turn up the heat, but you don't want to turn up the heat because then the fat's going to burn. So I'm just going to leave it be. And this is our seasoning that we made. We're going to use most of it towards the beginning. And we also have about 2/3 of a cup of finely chopped tomato pulp. You could also use ground tomatoes. I wouldn't use tomato puree because it's too tomatoey. And being that we're putting in roasted tomato paste in here, you don't need a double dose of that really tomatoey product. And then we have some dry sack sherry for its flavor and our quart of chicken stock. If you wanted to, you could put your shrimp shells, you could roast them in a little vegetable oil and put your chicken stock in there and let it simmer. And you could flavor it with that, but I'm just using already peeled shrimp. I'm going to show you the shrimp again here and give you a little secret here. These are peeled into vein, but what I do is after they're peeled, I pull the vein out with my finger so I don't have to butterfly them. Because I personally like them this way personally, but feel free to, if you can't get the knife, pull the knife out, you can, if you can't pull the vein out, you can cut them. Starting to get some nice color on our bacon here. If you didn't want to use bacon here, just increase the fat to 2 tablespoons of chicken fat or other fat. You could also use rendered pork lard here. Would be fine, duck fat, goose fat, they would all work in this recipe. Or use vegetable oil if that's what you have. It really doesn't matter too much. The chicken fat just gives nice flavor, so that's why I like to use it. Just keep cooking it. It's to get a little bit crispy and a little browned. That's what we want to see. I'm going to raise the heat all the way to high now. And we're going to add our Holy Trinity in here. Slide it all in. Everything including the garlic and the parsley because it's all going to cook and get a little browned. And also at this point, we're going to put our first pinch of salt in here. And let this sweat out over high heat. It's going to saute here over high heat. And you can let it get some color. Just be careful to stir often because you don't want to burn the garlic or burn anything in here. If you're worried about it, you could throw a quarter of a cup to a third of a cup of water in here, and that'll slow the pot down, but it's not necessary if you're standing over it. For a pot like this, use a wooden spoon or use a rubber spatula like this, or a silicone spoon like this. The wooden mixing spatula is great for this, as is the mat for Exoglass one as well. This is the beginning to a lot of Creole dishes and recipes, is that Holy Trinity. It has just a wonderful flavor. It's a base flavor. And it's a Creole version of mirepoix. Smells wonderful. I was inspired to make this recipe for Fat Tuesday because I had leftover on the bone ham. And I got the idea to do a hambalaya. And they do love their ham down in New Orleans. They use a ham product called taco, which is smoked ham that's spiced. I'm just using an off-the-bone roasted ham that I have cut up left over. If you could find some tasso ham, you could put tasso ham in here, but I like the roasted ham because we're going to put all of our spices in here. We want this to become translucent and somewhat tender before we add any of our spicing. We have to be very careful when we put the spice in here. We're going to sprinkle in 4 spoonfuls of our spice and then give it a stir. And then immediately put half of a cup of dry sherry into the pot. That's an important step. You need to give it a stir without any liquid so that the spices bloom. And now that that's cooked down, we're going to add our tomato pulp or ground tomatoes. We're going to put our roux in here. This just adds an extra layer of flavor in here. If you're gluten-free, you could leave it out. I don't believe there's a substitute. There's not a substitute for it. And our tomato paste in here, the roasted tomato paste. And just start to work everything together. It'll be thick at the moment. And now we're going to slowly add our hot chicken stock. Okay. Give it a good stir. Now we're going to put in some more salt at this point. We're going to let that be it. Because we're also going to put in here a healthy dose of Lean Parents Worcestershire sauce. And 3 tablespoons of Crystal hot sauce. We may put more in here later. And also at this point, we're going to stir in our ham. If you have less ham, that's fine. If you have more ham, that's fine. Just Stir it in. It's going to come to a boil. Then we're going to drop it to a simmer, and I'm going to cook it partially. I'm going to cook it uncovered for 30 minutes. Where everything's going to simmer for 30 minutes uncovered. Where all the flavors are going to concentrate. I'm going to taste it right now just for base seasoning. And then later we'll taste it again later. It's good. Add a little more salt. And a few more dashes of Leon Parents. And then at the end I'll put a little more Crystal hot sauce in here because I do like it spicy. This is important that this simmers uncovered because we want this to thicken. It's going to be this is known in New Orleans as the sauce piquante. And if it's a jambalaya with chicken and andouille sausage, they would be inside this pot. You would just render them out first, remove them, and then make the sauce and then add them back in. The shrimp is always added at the end. You could also, if you want, you could put clams, mussels, calamari. You could put clams, I wouldn't put calamari, but clams or mussels would be delicious in here. Scallops, wonderful. You just put them in at the end, according to their time. Clams about 8 minutes, mussels about 5 minutes. And the shrimp could go in with the mussels and just let. And make sure you cook your bivalves, your mollusks, yeah. Your mollusks, also known as your bivalves. Make sure you cook them until they open. And if they don't open when it's done, then they are dead and just discard. This pot, it's come to a boil. We're going to now drop it to a moderate simmer at 3. This is going to go for 30 minutes. And then at that 30-minute time slot, that's when we're going to add our seasoned shrimp. So we'll see you back here in 30 minutes. Welcome back to Fat Tuesday Special on Injo's Kitchen. Now we're going to make the scallion rice while this finishes cooking. And I'm going to turn the heat on high, and I have 2 teaspoons of vegetable oil in here. And I'm going to put the whites of the scallions in with, and heat them up in with the vegetable oil. It's important. And I have 2 cups of rice, jasmine rice, and 2 cups of chicken stock in the back there that I'm warming over the back burner. Because it's very important that the stock is hot and the rice is hot. I also have a lid that tight fits over here. I also have 2 tablespoons of butter. I have the rice unwashed, of course. We're going to use a little salt. And the scallion greens, which we will add at the end when we're fluffing the rice. Because this can take about 20 minutes to cook and about 5-10 minutes to sit and steam. Doesn't need to cook long with the onions. Now we're going to slide in our rice. And now you need to coat the rice in the hot fat. That is the most important step here. I'm going to pull that little piece of nastiness out of there and make sure it's coated in the hot fat, and we're going to do this just like you would for rice pilaf. And what I have is equal parts rice to liquid, and our liquid is hot, so I'm going to turn it off. Because technically you can bring it all the way to a full rolling boil, but it's hot, that works out fine. Once we add the liquid, then we're going to add our butter and our stock and a little salt, and then we're going to drop it to a simmer. I think that's about fine, so now we're going to And it will immediately come to a boil. So now we're going to put some butter in here, a little salt. And it's not important that the butter melts at this point. All we're going to do now is bring this to a full boil. When we see it hit the boil, I'm going to cover. I'm going to grab a tighter fitting lid here. That lid is not functioning, so I'll just put it here. Nope. Not gonna work. Let's just. We'll have to be this one here. That lid isn't so tight, so to remedy the situation like the lid, I'm going to use a little aluminum foil here. Just take a piece of aluminum foil and we're going to cover. We're going to turn the heat down now, all the way to low. And then now that we've got the foil on there, the foil is going to be that protective layer while it cooks. Okay. Now we can look back at our jambalaya here, which has about 9 minutes to go here before we add the shrimp. I will taste it at this point for salt, and it is thickening up nicely. Gonna add a little salt at this point. Don't need much salt. We won't need our spatula marks. We're going to fork the rice when it's done. And now we're going to tighten our tin foil around the sides. This can also be done in an oven. If you don't have extra stove space, you could do this in an oven. But it's on low heat right now, so that's important. The heat the heat will go down. I'm not worried about it. It's just a powerful burner. So give this a stir. I'm actually going to turn up our jambalaya a little bit here to medium, so it just boils and reduces a bit thicker because we want a bit more thickness on it. And we'll get that because of our roux that we used in here. Also going to grind in a little fresh black pepper at this point. We did put some in the beginning, but it needs a little more. And then at the end, I'll put in another tablespoon of Crystal hot sauce for the taste. And that'll be at the end and give a little acidity. Okay. And in about 6-7 minutes, we're going to add the shrimp in here. We will turn it down and bring it back down to a simmer and then turn in the shrimp. Because it's important that this is at a most gentle simmer when the shrimp are in the pot. You do not want to overcook the shrimp. So we'll be back in 6 minutes and finish off our jambalaya. And then when our rice is ready, I'll show you how to prepare. Welcome back to the Fat Tuesday Mardi Gras special. And we are looking at our jambalaya here. I'm going to turn it back down to low because we're going to get ready to add our shrimp. We're going to put in a last little sprinkle of our seasoning. I'm not going to put all of it in here, just a little sprinkle. A little more dash of salt in here. And it's thickened up nicely, as you can see. And And 1 more tablespoon of crystal hot sauce. You can serve more at the table. Now I'm going to go grab the shrimp and we will proceed. And they have been tossed with the seasoning and the salt. Just sit them on top and press them in. It's important that this process is slow so that you don't overcook your shrimp, because the shrimp cook very quickly. Okay, let's do the last one here. I'm not going to stir it or anything, we're just going to leave it alone. Those are good. And I'll set a timer for 5 minutes, because it only takes about 5 minutes to cook them. And then we're going to shut the burner off and we're going to remove this from the pan, because it's ultra important that you don't overcook your shrimp. Also at this point, take an old can, and if you like, you can go around and you can remove any fat that's accumulated. I don't mind it, so I'm just going to leave it. But if there's a lot, it can be removed. Got about 11 minutes on our rice. For the cooking process, then we're going to shut it off. And I'm going to pull it off the heat at that point. We're going to pull it off the heat to finish the rice. The rice is going to finish off the heat. I have a trivet set out and we'll finish it off the heat. Because when the 20-minute time is done, the rice might be technically done, but it still needs to finish cooking, and it takes about 5 or 10 more minutes for that to happen. So we've set out our trivet here. Ready to go. Then I set out a second trivet where we can rest our beautiful jambalaya that we're going to serve. We'll give it one final taste here while it's simmering away. It's perfect. It's delicious and wonderful. And we'll give it a good stir once it comes off the heat, which is in 2.5 minutes. There's a nice spicy flavor there. Gets you right in the back of the throat. Excuse me. It's delicious. Excuse me. This will be edited out. We'll be back in 2 minutes and I'll show you what this looks like. And then we'll finish our rice. Welcome back to the Mardi Gras Fat Tuesday special, and here it is, folks. It's perfect. I'm going to turn off the heat. Give it a stir. And this, my friends, is done. We're going to pull it off and place it on the trivet. And it's done. We still have 6 minutes to go on our rice for the cooking time, and then the rice is going to come off the heat and sit on the trivet for another 10 minutes or so, which allows the rice to fully absorb all the steam and all the liquid in there. So we're going to come back in 16 minutes and I will show you how to finish the rice and how to serve. Welcome back. We're going to uncover our rice. And now we need to fluff our rice. So just take the fork and fluff. There are some toasty bits on the bottom, which is delicious and has a little flavor. I'm going to grab my pot holder here to hold the pan while I do this. And if you did it right and you use equal parts rice to water, the rice will be perfect every time. Last but not least is our scallion greens, which I slivered. Get them added in here. There's our perfect rice. And here's our perfect jambalaya with shrimp. Now the way I like to serve this is we're going to use this large bowl. It's a ramen bowl, actually. We're going to take rice on the bottom. Like 4 spoonfuls of rice on the bottom. You could put less if you want. And then dig down, press down into the rice and put a couple ladles of it on there. And then just a little bit of chiffonade parsley on the top. And we're going to serve it with, this is a gumbo spoon. It's perfect for eating this recipe. Beautiful jambalaya. It's delicious, wonderful. And when we come back, we're going to make our chicken etouffee.